your host, Taylor Ann Carpenter, and welcome to The Talk Chamber, a production of the Greater Memphis Chamber. The Talk Chamber is the podcast for the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. Our episode today is all about workforce. We have an incredible guest with lots to share. Melody Freeman is the Executive Director of the Greater Memphis Workforce Board. Welcome, Melody. We are honored to have you here.
Hey, glad to be here.
So before we dive too deep into the world of workforce, can you take a second and share a little bit about your background and who Melody is?
Sure. I'm a native Memphian, born and raised in Orange Mound, one of the oldest African-American neighborhoods in the country. I come from a rich lineage of artists and creatives. My mom, Carolyn, is a powerhouse, an organist, pianist, songwriter, and all-around heart center soul who pours into all the people around her. Even my dad is an incredibly gifted musician and builder who could turn paper clips into engines or toothpicks into a house. Creativity and music, it just runs deep in my family. So it's in my rhythm, it's in my thinking. It's one of my ways of being. I've always known that I needed to be in spaces where I could build, dream, and create. Otherwise, I just wither. I just die. Before I even knew what a career was, life was already handing me lessons. I hint at this story a lot, but here's a real story. I was that little kid who always found herself in the most precarious situations. And my mom, she never made me feel like I was bad, even though I probably was a little bit, a little mischievous. I just remember being loved, being hugged, not scolded. She saw me for who I was, even when I was maybe a little rebellious, a little headstrong, which I still am depending on who you ask. But my first real moment of realization, of feeling the world press against my joy, was my very first day in kindergarten. I heard all these magical things from my sister Harmony, and I was so excited. Harmony and I got on the bus, and pretty quickly, I noticed these little boys throwing paper, acting wild, just showing out. I was sitting there, taking it all in, trying to make sense of what was happening, when suddenly I felt my head jerk. One of those boys had probably nudged me or pushed it. And I remember thinking, what is going on? That ride must have been 15 minutes, but it felt like forever. These boys weren't just being rowdy, they were targeting us. Two of the tiniest, cutest little girls on the bus just minding our business. In Memphis, 15 minutes on the bus is an eternity, if you know anything about bus riding. So before I even got to middle school, I learned real quick that the bus was just a place where just extraterrestrial things can happen, tease and fights. It's a wild place. You've seen the movies.
A zoo for sure.
Exactly. So despite it all, I had a great first day of school, but the whole time I was dreading the ride back. I got back on the bus. I smelled something strong. Elmer's glue. Same boys, same seat. I didn't know what they'd done until I sat in a pile of it. And I heard the laughter. I stood up, turned around, and punched that fifth grade boy square in the eye.
No.
Yes. I don't know what I was thinking. Not condoning violence, but kind of condoning violence, I guess. But I do believe in defending your peace. That moment taught me something that's still true in my leadership today. Sometimes when the pressure's on and the stakes are high, you have to meet desperation with fierce action.
And how did you then end up in this position with the Greater Memphis Workforce Board?
Okay, so once I graduated high school, barely, I might add, and I mean barely. If you saw where I started and where I am now, you'd think it was fiction, but that was real. That was God orchestrating every detail in my life before I even knew it. I didn't go to college right away. I wasn't a traditional student. I went in with purpose, though. I thought I wanted to teach. I wanted to go back to the classroom and find those earlier versions of myself, the kid who missed a ton of school, who was chronically truant, but no one ever stopped to ask, what's going on with them? What's going on with her? I wanted to be the person who tapped a kid on the shoulder and said, I see you. That stint in education did not last long. It was very short, real short. In some ways, the classroom felt like a crash course in every system that's broken. I started out subbing, and what I realized was that I didn't care about anything in that classroom except the students and all the factors affecting their ability to thrive, their ability to access a quality of life afforded to some. After serving a year in America Vista out in Fraser, trying my hand at education, I just didn't feel like I was making the kind of impact that I wanted to make. Honestly, I felt more like I was part of this interesting conspiracy. I love to read conspiracies, by the way, to convince Black people to be more docile and to just accept the conditions around them and not fight. And that feeling stuck with me. I carry some regret from that period because I knew in my bones that I was built for something different, something that called for more urgency, more boldness. Hats off to all the teachers making an impact, by the way,
100%.
despite it all.
100%.
So that's when the perfect opportunity came along. In 2015, I landed a role as a youth program specialist and everything changed. Felt like the world opened up. Suddenly I was in a space that blended everything I cared about, education, advocacy, social work, all in one. And then there was this one complicated act called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. I got it. I could digest it, and most importantly, I could use it to put real benefits directly into the lives of young people, and so that was a win for me. I could help put them on the path, on a trajectory that was way more transformative than anything I was doing in the classroom. That's when I knew this is where I'm supposed to be. That intersection where systems, services, and stories come together, that's where I felt the magic. What I found out was that I could use WIOA to infuse real benefits into the lives of people just like me. I remember being 19 or 20, sitting in some kind of career session at the AJC, telling somebody I wanted to be a whole telemarketer out here. That was my whole vision at that point. I just needed a job. I did get the job at Teleperformance. Our main job was to call American Airlines customers and ask them about like their benefits and rewards programs. I can't even like tell you everything that I did because I only worked there for one day. You want to know what day that was? It was September 11th, 2001.
No way.
I worked there for one day. I came home, got my baby, my little baby at the time. I just thought the world was ending, but I was like, I'm so glad I'm at home and I'm not on the plane. And so, yeah. But side note, I wanted to be a telemarketer, and that's actually in the case note in the system that we use today where we report our performance. But I just thought it was funny, and that's why this moment is kind of full circle for me, and we'll get to that in a minute. But in that youth role, in which I ended up being promoted a few times over 5 years, managing this large network, I could be that person on the other side of the table, nudging a large network of providers directly interfacing with youth to say, are you sure? They could point to labor market trends. They could talk about what was going on, what was sustainable. I could push people to ask the hard questions, to challenge surface level guidance and raise the standard for how we serve the hardest to reach young people. Have you considered this path? This is an in-demand career, and that felt really powerful to me. It felt personal because I knew what it meant to not know. You remember the telemarketer piece? So sometimes you need someone to help you dream bigger, when your sight is not far enough in the future.
You've shared a lot about kind of some stepping stones into where you are now, and I can already start to see how these little moments have impacted you and brought you to this place. So you've been in this space of community and social impact for several years now. What draws you to this type of work, especially here in Memphis?
What draws me here? It's really the need. It's very personal. When I reflect on my own life and my journey, I'm reminded every day why this matters. I love Memphis because of the people, because of my people. My family is here. And yes, I'm one of those folks who say everybody is my cousin. I stand by that. I really believe there are about 0.5 degrees of separation between Mid-Southerners. I don't care if you're black, white, purple. You're going to find that connectivity to people here in the South. So when I make decisions, I do it with all those faces in mind, the cousins, the neighbors, the folks who are quietly praying for something better. They're counting on me to show up with authenticity, with skill, and with heart. Now, I know I'm doing a lot of talking today because this is a podcast, but normally I want my actions to speak louder. What really keeps me in this work is just a sense of divine accountability. I know God didn't give me this story the lessons, the trials, and my gifts just for me. I was called to use them to serve others, and that's exactly what I intend to do, regardless of what my title is.
That's awesome. Melody, let's break it down for everybody. I want to hear more about what workforce is in general. So how would you describe or explain workforce development, and why is workforce development important? And then also, if you could build on that, what does workforce development just look like in general?
Understood. I thought about this piece a lot, and workforce development, it can be an overwhelming, almost a set of words that just don't even make sense to people. So I wanted to leave those out.
Please do. Yes.
So I'm going to use an analogy instead. Workforce development is pretty much like a potluck. Everybody shows up with what they think people need. Some folks bring fine meats like college degrees. Others bring the sides like short-term credentials or specialized skills. Somebody's always bringing a casserole, a mix of mistakes, successes, and life lessons all baked together. And then there's always somebody who walks in with an empty dish, just hoping to fill it. That's the job seeker. Now, the government, they're the ones who reserved the venue and gave us a little money for folding chairs and maybe name tags, but they make the rules about the food safety, and they want receipts for everything. I mean, everything. The training providers in our network, they're like the folks who spent 3 days in the kitchen proudly saying, this dish took 900 hours of training, 2 certifications, and a practicum. And we appreciate the effort, but we're also trying to get them to season it just right for what employers are actually looking for. Employers, they're like the picky uncle at the end of the line. I'm not eating that unless it's got experience, soft skills, and can start on Monday. But when they find what they like, they'll ask for seconds and maybe even invest in the recipe. In us workforce folks, we're the ones running around with plates, translating what everybody brought, making sure folks eat, making sure people wash their hands, making sure they stay full, hopeful, and making sure nobody starts a fight over the store-bought potato salad. So that's the best way I can describe workforce without boring you with language that sounds like King James himself, is explaining what the workforce board is.
That's awesome. That's a really great visual picture for me and for others who aren't really skilled in this sector of the world. That really puts it in perspective of where I am, where other people are in this potluck of the world of workforce. So now that we've got a little bit better of an understanding and kind of have this picture in mind, let's discuss the Greater Memphis Workforce Development Board and what y'all are doing these days. For people who might not know, what does the Greater Memphis Workforce Board do, and how does that impact Memphians every day?
Ooh, okay. So the Greater Memphis Workforce Development Board, WEO boards like ours are locally empowered but federally rooted. We operate under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that we call WEO, which means, while we tailor solutions for our region, we also work in lockstep with the state to ensure alignment is with national priorities. The state sets the guardrails, we drive the strategy. Allocating funds, approving providers, and ensuring performance outcomes are really moving the needle for workers and employers. We're essentially the behind-the-scenes architects of the local workforce system. There's our board, and, we also have staff to the board. We don't just throw job fairs and post openings on bulletin boards, although we do a lot of job fairs. No, we strategically braid funding, policy, partnerships, and people together to create real pathways to prosperity. We expand across just about every sector: government, education, business, community organizations, to make sure that people who need opportunity the most are not left out of the conversation. And when I say people, I'm talking about folks who've been systemically overlooked, young people, returning citizens, people living in poverty, folks just trying to make a living and a life. I lead with vision, and they make sure public dollars are not only compliant, but catalytic. We build ecosystems. They hold me accountable, our staff, and our network of providers. We make sure folks in our region can access a workforce system that sees them, values them, and positions them to win.
That's really interesting, Melody. as you were talking, I was about to ask you, who are these people that you're catering towards? But you went ahead and answered and told us that it was young people, returning citizens, people living in poverty, and people just trying to make a living and live their lives. And that's, it's super important that we're all in some way part of the workforce.
Absolutely.
And you and your team are specialized in growing that workforce and helping those people who are looking for a job
That's
or
right.
trying to figure out what they're going to do. And I think there's a lot of people who don't understand who benefits from this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the job seekers, it's not the employers, it's our broader community.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the biggest challenges facing our workforce today, and where do you see the greatest opportunities?
One of the biggest challenges we face in workforce right now is helping people make sense of how to pursue their passion while also just trying to sustain a basic quality of life. It's holding this tension between survival and purpose in a world that's shifting faster than any of us can fully process. Jobs are changing, skills are evolving, and yet people are still just trying to thrive. And that ability to simply exist with dignity is so often tethered to things like, how much am I making per hour? Do I have to work weekends? Can I afford a rent? Can I afford a mortgage? These aren't just workforce questions, they're life questions. For me, what keeps me up at night is almost this triple consciousness. One, that I'm a creative human, a creative spirit, and that sometimes feels completely at odds with the structure and regulation heavy world of workforce development. I was talking to someone recently about the tension between doing what you love, what you're good at, and what you're called to do, and how sometimes those three things don't align. And then there's this other layer, the idea that maybe it's not that people don't want to work. Maybe it's that people are trying to figure out how to monetize meaning, how to take what they care about, what they're curious about, what lights them up, and turn it into something more sustainable. That's not laziness. That's deeply human and profoundly sacred. The desire to build a life around purpose, to be seen and valued, not just for what you produce, but for who you are, is one of the most honest pursuits there is. Workforce development isn't just about boosting GDP or increasing economic output. It challenges the idea that people are only valuable when they're producing something. Yes, economic growth matters, but people matter more. At its core, this work is about human flourishing. It's about dignity. And it's about building systems that make space for people to live, not just labor. And here's the opportunity, because it's not all just challenge. Although our hands are full, we have plenty. We're living in a time where someone can make a TikTok and become a millionaire, while another person might spend an entire year training to become a medical professional just to make $18 an hour, and they don't even like blood. So that's the kind of mismatch that we're dealing with. The opportunity lies in reimagining how we fuel people's passion and potential. How do we honor creativity, hustle, and drive, and connect it to sustainable, dignified pathways? How do we help folks monetize meaning in ways that don't require them to choose between purpose and a paycheck? If we get that right, we're not just building a workforce, we're building a future people actually want to be a part of.
Melody, that is so important that we, build that future that people want to be a part of, especially here in our city. And I think Memphis right now is just really growing, and there's a lot of growth, and workforce is so important and so vital to that growth. Are there any industries or trends that you see driving Memphis's economy in the coming years?
Oh, yes. One of the trends, or at least industries that is nearest to me, is the one around like our entertainment culture, tourism, hospitality. So my mom always worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. And when the gaps still weren't closed, my grandmother would quietly fill in the rest. We cleaned houses with my mom, and she worked nights and weekends as a church organist, several services. I spent my whole adolescence in a service, a church kid. But that's where her heart was, in the ministry and in the music. That's what she loved. I think about that a lot. Imagine a world where my mom could have made a sustainable living off what she was not only good at, but called to do. where creativity wasn't treated like a luxury, but like a legitimate economic driver. And the truth is, in Memphis, it is. So, according to the Memphis Music Strategy, over 8,000 people are employed in music related industries here. Church musicians, in particular, represent a huge but often invisible layer of that ecosystem. They support worship, yes, but they also support weddings, funerals, community events, and even political campaigns. They are cultural infrastructure. The music economy in Memphis generates more than 300 million annually, and yet so many of the people making that happen are piecing together gigs, scraping to get by without benefits or a safety net. So when you ask me about trends, I'm watching this convergence of culture, creativity, and commerce. The opportunity is in building models where people like my mom don't have to choose between calling and stability. It's time to stop forcing people into boxes and start investing in upskilling and amplifying the brilliance that already exists right here in Memphis.
You know, I'm so glad that you did bring up that Memphis Music Strategy, which for listeners, if you're wondering what we're talking about, Sound Diplomacy, the City of Memphis, and the Chamber, amongst some other partners, spent some time creating a music strategy for the city because we are a city that is known for music and known for so many incredible artists. And like you said, you brought up an incredible point. You know, they are a huge part of our ecosystem, but sometimes go a little unseen. And so
That's right.
I agree with you. I think that's going to be an exciting industry to watch and start seeing that. And I mean, I know everyone here at the Chamber and so many people in the city really value them, but it's important that, you know, we can invest in this upskilling and, like you said, amplify brilliance.
That's right.
That already exists and that's already here and that, you know, that we already have in our city, in our culture. When you think about Memphis's future, what role does workforce development play in making Memphis a hub for innovation?
Workforce development is the engine behind any innovation hub. You can't talk about becoming a center for creativity, tech, or advanced industry without talking about the pipeline or the people who power it. In Memphis, our innovation isn't just in labs or startups. It's in lived experience, in resilience, in the way people problem solve on the job and in their everyday lives. So we play a critical role in connecting and being a catalyst. We identify skills that are transferable, build new pathways where there weren't any, and align training with what the future is actually demanding. Innovation thrives when people have the tools, access, and the agency to build something new. And that's exactly what workforce development is here to do.
What a great quote. Innovation thrives when people have the tools, the access, and the agency to build something new. I think that's what we're doing here in Memphis. And
Absolutely.
I think, you know, you've just told us that workforce is crucial. You know, it's that pipeline. We've got to connect the jobs, connect the people to those jobs. What's one big change you'd love to see in Memphis's workforce landscape a decade or so from now?
Sure. I want our American Job Center to be a beacon, a place every Mid-Southerner, regardless of background or title, would feel proud and empowered to walk into. And I say that with my whole chest. I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. The Chamber, the board, the Clio, they've all been fully supported. My new team, they've all been supportive of my leadership, my passion, and the purpose I bring to this work. But still, I often ask myself, if life shifted, if I needed help, a new path, or support, would I return to the AJC? Would my team return to the AJC if life shifted for them? I want that answer to be a resounding yes. That's the litmus test, not just for me, but for anyone who's ever questioned whether these systems are truly for them. I want our AJC to feel like more than a service center. I want it to feel like a launch pad, a space where people are met with dignity, real tools, sharp data, sharp people, and no judgment. A decade from now, if people see the AJC logo and think of hope, opportunity, direction, that's when I'll know we've really done something transformational.
Now, can we back up for a second and tell us what the AJC or the American Job Center is for those who may not be familiar with it?
The American Job Center is the region's one-stop hub for employment and training services. Whether you're a job seeker, exploring your next move, a young person just starting out, or someone re-entering the workforce, the AJC offers personalized support, career coaching, skills training, and direct connections to employers. It's not just a building, it's a space rooted in equity designed to meet people where they are and move them toward where they want to be. The AJC brings together public programs, partner organizations, and real-time labor market insights to create a seamless experience that helps people find not just any job, but a sustainable, meaningful career.
So is that located at Crosstown? Is that?
Yes, it's at Crosstown. We're on the 6th floor.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So we've spoken about the broader community and how community is really impacted through workforce development and how, you want these people to have, opportunity and direction and dignity in the work that they're doing. What can Memphians do to support your work? And do you have a specific call to action for us?
Yeah, actually I do. This work, it doesn't just belong to one agency or one city. It's really all of us. It's not just Memphians, it's Ripleyans, if I said that right, Covingtonians, Somervillians. It's everyone who calls this region home and believes in the power of people to rise when given a real shot. So what you can do is start by seeing workforce as your work. We can all see it as our work. Hire someone who's been overlooked. Advocate for paid internships. Show up to local trainings. Vote for policies that protect workers and expand opportunity. Share a job posting. Mentor somebody. Ask your own employer what they're doing to grow talent locally. And most of all, believe in the people around you. Sometimes all it takes to change a life is someone saying, I see you, let me help open the door. That's how we build a region where every community, urban and rural, can thrive.
Melody, we want to thank you so much and your team for just opening that door for people and working tirelessly to create a better Memphis and a greater Memphis. We are so glad that you could sit down with us and discuss workforce. We're glad to have such a powerful and passionate person like you leading our workforce board. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Talk Chamber. We are so glad you're here. Today we met Melody Freeman, the Executive Director of the Greater Memphis Workforce Board. She shared with us her upbringing, her passion for Memphis, and what she's doing in the workforce space. If you enjoyed this episode or learned a valuable piece of information, share this episode with a friend, or a few. Subscribe to The Talk Chamber to keep up with the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. Follow us on social media at Memphis Chamber, and we'll see you next time.